Hello and welcome to our May 14th policy meeting of the Phoenix City Council. Thank you for joining us today, where we'll be covering important topics including food assistance and internet connectivity. We'll begin with a call to order and a roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia?
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Here.
Councilwoman Stark?
Here.
Councilman Waring?
Here.
Councilwoman Williams?
Here.
Vice Mayor Guardado? Vice Mayor Guardado? And Mayor Gallego?
Here. Thank you all. I understand today we do not have a call for an executive session or any reports from our city manager, so we will move to item number 1, our food assistance plan. We'll begin with an overview of our strategic plan and where food assistance fits in with our Deputy City Manager, Jeff Barton, who's been working hard on our overall strategy. And thank you all to our city staff who's worked on this item. It's incredibly important that our residents have access to nutritious food, and this council's been fighting food deserts and trying to work on food action since before COVID-19, but the pandemic has made it even harder for our most vulnerable adults to get access to food, as well as families and households with children, including those who received assistance through schools. So today we'll be able to leverage our great assets of Phoenix. Jeff, please introduce the item.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Good afternoon. As you mentioned, we're here today to talk about the food delivery program, but what I wanted to do is just reorient you again. As you know, we are in receipt of over $293 million worth of COVID relief fund dollars. CRF, to make it easier for everyone to say, that mouthful of a word. What we're going to talk to you today about, again, is you back on May 5th, you first adopted a strategic plan that was proposed to you. It's been tweaked, it's been revised. So it is a living, breathing plan that adjusts from time to time, and we bring these items back to you for your direction, as well as for your guidance on how we should allocate and distribute these funds. But today, I'm going to turn this over to Deanna and Marshall, and they'll talk to you specifically about the $5 million for food that we're allocating under the community investment umbrella of our strategic plan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We're pleased to be here today to discuss the Food Assistance and CARES Act funding plan, as Jeff indicated. Joining me at the table today is Marshall Franklin, Human Services Director, and joining us via WebEx is Roseanne Albright with our environmental program. She's our program coordinator. We're excited to talk about the plan that we developed in partnership with many of our partners in the community, not only our larger partners, but also our food pantries and some of the smaller organizations that are really in need of food during this COVID-19 crisis. And so with that, I will turn it over to Marshall Franklin.
Thank you, Deanna. Good afternoon, Mayor Gallego and members of the City Council. We're here to talk with you about the Food Assistance Plan. The overview is comprised of the direction that you provided to us to provide a plan that addresses food need for our most vulnerable populations in our community who are impacted by COVID-19, to ensure that we are helping to provide access to healthy foods for that impacted population. Also to ensure we are supporting food banks and community agencies that are providing work in this area. Our goal is to implement this plan, if approved, in June of 2020. And as Jeff mentioned, we are going to be using the $5 million that has been allocated. In talking with the industry, as Deanna mentioned, there were 3 challenges that were identified. Those challenges center around transportation, delivery, and storage of food, infrastructure assistance in terms of transportation, issues around labor in terms of volunteers with the COVID epidemic. Many of these agencies rely upon volunteers, and volunteers are obviously sheltering in place, so they are not able to volunteer. And the third challenge that the industry is running into situates around purchase of critical food and specialty items for those who are in need. Staff is proposing to provide allocation for the food assistance plan for the following entities: $500,000 to the Association of Arizona Food Banks / Arizona Food Bank Network, St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, St. Vincent de Paul, and I apologize for St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, $2 million, St. Vincent de Paul, $365,000, Salvation Army, $135,000, the City of Phoenix, $300,000, and then other community needs in the amount of $1.7 million. I will walk through the first 5, and then Roxanne will follow up with the final one in terms of the details regarding the proposed allocation. Specific to the Association of Arizona Food Banks and the network, we are proposing $250,000 that would go to a program called the Emergency Food Assistance Program Agencies Invested. It would support approximately 5 large agencies that are working within the food bank system and network to provide critical distribution across Phoenix to those who are in need. It would be a grant program where there would be criteria established around needing to provide the support to those who live in Phoenix, also ensuring that there are delivery systems that have the meals delivered to individuals at their home where needed. Also, the grant process would be designed in partnership with the Food Bank Network to be very simple. It would be a request of what is the need, how would you use the funds, and then, of course, how are you going to track to ensure that the funds are being used in a way that meets the requirements of COVID-19. The other $250,000 would be around supporting smaller agencies. In the City of Phoenix, there are about 380 smaller agencies that do this work as well, many of which are needing assistance as it relates to their infrastructures and the things that they're doing. So, for example, it could be specialty types of foods that are needed. It could be things like support as they work through not having volunteers. And it would be similar to the above process with the larger groups, where it would be a grant process administered through the association, very simple. What are you needing it for? How will you use it in the tracking mechanism? And as you can see there, the proposal would be anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, and for those above in the larger group, anywhere between approximately $20,000 to $40,000.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman.
Mayor, I meet once a month with about 50 to 60 pastors within the Maryville, South Phoenix area and the west side. And these are individuals that deal with support. I was just wondering, are the churches involved in somehow, some way they can apply the ones that actually deal with these individuals on a weekly basis?
So Mayor Gallego and Councilman Nowakowski, yes, when you look at the list that was provided both for our larger providers in the network as well as those 380 smaller providers, there are many houses of worship that are included in that. We do have a list that I'm looking at, and as I take a look at it, it covers many of our houses of worship.
Mayor, I looked through that list. I didn't see that. Can you give me that list of the churches, especially in the Maryville and Southwest Phoenix area, that can apply for this in the near future, please?
Thank you, Councilman, and I understand that there is someone from St. Mary's Food Bank who is calling into the meeting for public testimony, and so Marcos, we might ask you to talk a little bit about partners with our houses of worship. So we'll put him on notice when we get to public comment. Thank you, Councilman. Marshall, back to you.
Next, would like to outline the proposal for you for St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance. Of the $2 million that I referenced at the beginning of the presentation, we are proposing $1 million of that would go to St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, and that would focus on support for transportation from source to community, including much-needed home delivery. We are proposing $800,000 would go to food. That would be the ability to purchase bulk food with leveraging St. Mary's Food Bank's ability to buy large quantities, which means you're receiving them at a much more cheaper price, if you will, which will go towards food boxes and grab-and-go meals and those types of things. And then $200,000 for warehouse and storage, including production, for a total of $2 million. For St. Vincent de Paul, and talking with them in particular, there is $365,000 that I referenced. Of that, $50,000 would go towards purchase of food. As many of you are aware, typically there is an annual Postal Service canned food drive. With COVID for this year, that was canceled, and so St. Vincent shared with us that they lost upwards of 100,000 pounds of food, and that $50,000 would help them with being able to purchase food that they weren't able to receive through the fund drive. And then also St. Vincent de Paul, as many individuals and agencies are doing, you're not wanting to host congregate meal opportunities, so there are some additional fees that St. Vincent de Paul has incurred to take the services that it provides at its 3 dining facilities, the Human Services Campus there on Watkins and then in Sunny Slope, to convert that to-go meals. And so there would be $315,000 that we would propose would go towards that, for again that total of $365,000. And then for Salvation Army, and talking with Salvation Army, there's a lot of work they're doing in this area, similar types of challenges in how you are converting what sometimes are dining hall meals into takeout meals as well as food boxes. And again, that amount, $135,000. And then finally, for the City of Phoenix, as you are aware, we did immediately close our senior centers in response to COVID-19. We have many seniors that were receiving their lunches in a congregate format at our senior centers. And with the closures of our senior centers and at your direction, you wanted to ensure that those seniors still received at least 1 meal per day that we were providing in our senior centers. And so the $300,000 is the increased cost that we have incurred and will incur relative to converting our congregate meal program to a home-delivered meal program. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Roseanne, who will talk through the other community needs.
Thank you, Marshall. Mayor, members of the council. So this last bucket of money, you would click the slide, please, is to support equitably local organizations that are providing services already to families impacted by COVID-19 through a call for proposals. Next click, please. So the goals of this particular pot of money is really to support existing organizations that have been serving residents in food desert and low-income areas and communities of color. What we've learned over the past couple of months as I've kept in touch with our food system network and stakeholders and community residents is that there has been a lot of innovation and change and adaptation that has resulted in organizations providing food to the community that are not part of this larger network that we have talked about with regards to St. Mary's, St. Vincent de Paul, et cetera. So these are folks that are doing work in these diverse communities by the community. We hope that this also encourages partnerships that may not have otherwise occurred and continues to promote that innovation that not only helps us now during this crisis, but may be opportunities to continue those innovative partnerships and means of delivering food in the future so that we continue to develop that resilient food system. Just as a few examples of some of the organizations that are working in this way, in the South Phoenix area, Unlimited Potential and their group of promotoras are working with Spaces of Opportunity Urban Farm, and they have been providing the produce that is grown there at Spaces, boxing it, and delivering it to families in need. We have another group called Sun Produce Co-op, which is a cooperative that was formed by a group of farmers that they have all gotten together and are delivering produce again that they are growing locally and delivering it to families. And another example is Duet. They are focused on delivering to seniors prepared meals. So those are just 3 examples of the many that we're aware of, and maybe others that we may not be aware of that are doing this work. Next slide. So our plan is to use a process of a call for proposals, which would be issued the week of May the 25th, and we would want to be able to distribute the funds by the end of June. And the eligible entities for this pot of money would be nonprofits, health organizations, social service providers, farmers, community-supported agriculture, food hubs, grassroots community organizations, and we've also included restaurants and event venues because we have been contacted by some of these operations that would like to get involved, and they have the capacity to prepare meals but need some assistance in purchasing food and setting up the delivery infrastructure to get those meals delivered to our families. This pot of money would also be able to be used by schools. And I want to give you a little bit of information about how schools are fitting into this, and they do it in 2 ways. One is that they are part of the St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, in that right now a lot of the school districts are getting food from St. Mary's and delivering food boxes. Then there's a second piece to the school districts that are preparing meals, hot meals, breakfast and lunch. For example, at Cartwright School District, they've been providing about 8,000 breakfasts and 8,000 lunches every day to families in their school district. So there's an opportunity to assist them on that piece of prepared meals, as there are other school districts as well that do this. Our challenge is that we would not be able to help them with the full cost of everything, but we would be able to help them augment because it does cost quite a bit of money. We have some estimates of about $900,000 in Cartwright to deliver these meals. But since we've got that nice pot of 1.7, there could be some assistance provided there as well. The entities must, of course, provide food assistance directly to COVID-impacted families. And right now, we're also evaluating ways to provide funding to some larger organizations that already have the existing infrastructure to award grant funds to smaller organizations, because as the city, we may not be able to move quickly, and we may have a little bit of a bureaucratic process where how others that are doing this work out in the community, for example, nonprofits, may be able to do it a little faster. So we're continuing to evaluate that as well. And of course, we want to establish criteria for this call for proposals so that we can take a look at the organizational capacity and the ability to provide the services. What do they need? What are the services they are going to be delivering? How are they tracking it? And what is their schedule? Because we know we have to get these funds out the door in June and used up by the end of the year. And the last item is the amount that we are proposing, a $25,000 minimum award up to a $500,000 maximum award. So that allows that opportunity for schools or for larger organizations to acquire those funds and use them for themselves in the case of schools, or use them to dole out to smaller organizations in smaller increments. So that is what we are proposing for that last community needs. And I'll turn it back to Marshall.
Thank you, Roseanne. So to conclude our presentation, our recommendation and what we're seeking approval for is the food assistance plan. Again, $500,000 that would go to the Association of Arizona Food Banks / Arizona Food Bank Network. $2 million that would go to St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance. $365,000 that would go to St. Vincent de Paul. $135,000 that would go to Salvation Army. $300,000 to the City of Phoenix. And then $1.7 million for other community needs, which gets us to that $5 million. And with that, that concludes our presentation, and we welcome any questions that the City Council may have.
Mayor?
Thank you, Director Franklin. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, thank you to the staff. This is great work. I'm very pleased On top of it, I understand the governor also allocated $5 million to food banks throughout the state of Arizona, so that's good news as well. I do have a question for Roseanne on the organizations that could file for a grant. I have a business in District 3 called Joy Bus. It's a restaurant, but they also have a bus, and they deliver meals to cancer patients. Is there a way they could qualify for some of the money if we use the argument that cancer patients can be impacted by COVID because of the isolation and being vulnerable? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what's the best way to qualify, because there are a lot of great organizations out in our community, and I want to make sure we're getting the word out to those groups and trying to help in any way we can.
Mayor, Councilwoman Stark, that is a great suggestion. I think we would have to ensure that what they are providing meets the criteria of the funds, the federal funds, and if those patients are definitely vulnerable and are impacted by COVID in that they cannot get out, then I think we could take a look closely at it and see if they might qualify. And that's one of the reasons we included health organizations and thinking about health as well. So thank you. We'll take that under consideration.
Great. I just think that's great news. I think this is wonderful. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark. Thank you, Roseanne. The portion you presented really gives us a neat way to help a lot of people who are doing good work and who have been impacted by this. Our agricultural partners help make Great City, and we've not included them in some of our earlier programs. The same I have heard from event venues who are really struggling right now and want a way to stay afloat while still recognizing that large events do not make sense given the phase of where we are right now. So this really can help a lot of great organizations. Certainly agree with Councilwoman Stark that we want to deliver food to those who are vulnerable and for whom a COVID-19 diagnosis would be particularly threatening, and that includes people who are fighting health challenges such as cancer or our older adults. We've heard that there's great need for those as well as for our kids.
Mayor?
Councilman, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Roseanne, thank you so much for the piece and to make sure grassroots communities get funding. I think your food justice plan and some of the previous conversations we've had signal that low-income communities and communities of color are already suffering or were already suffering before the pandemic. And so I'm glad we can also address this knowing that the pandemic only exacerbates the conditions that already existed. So I think it's really important to provide the $1.7 million for the small grassroots organizations that have been driving the work or serving vulnerable populations in our communities. Specifically, organizations like Tiger Mountain, Unlimited Potential, and all the partners at Spaces for Opportunity, I think are going to do great work and make sure that we get this money to the people that need it the most. And also really glad we're partnering with the schools and pushing that forward. So I fully support how we're moving forward with these funds.
Mayor?
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman DeCiccio.
Just a couple of quick questions on that, on the $1.7 million. And I get the intent, and I think it's an honorable thing, but the federal government is very clear as to the type of accounting that's required on these things with these groups. So what type of oversight are we, as a city, going to be providing? One of it, they can't provide more than 10% toward their administrative costs. This is a question to staff. How are we going to be monitoring that? Not just that, but how are we monitoring all the groups?
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, members of the council, we will enter into a contract with each of the entities and agencies that either come in for the funding or the larger organizations that we deem suitable to provide the funding to smaller organizations. In those contracts, we always work with our legal team to make sure that we have all the appropriate terms and conditions and oversights and audit language in the contracts. So we will continue to do that with these contracts as well.
Well, I get that part. I mean, that's a contractual agreement you have, but I'm just asking, how do we monitor that they did those exact things?
Mayor,
I mean, how are we doing the account? How are we doing? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilman CCO. Thank you for that question. It actually builds on a conversation that was held this morning at the audit committee, in which members Waring, Williams, and Stark sit on with some residents, and we talked about COVID. And so one of the things we know we need to do as staff, Councilman, to your question, is to add some support in our contract monitoring and oversight group. And we believe that that is eligible expense under the COVID funding. And so I've had a talk with Ms. Jonovich and Mr. Barton, and we're going to be putting together a plan to have an oversight group that will do exactly what you say, which is to, first of all, make sure that the contracts are written correctly with law, but then, as you say, to follow up and monitor those contracts regularly and ensure that they are being followed.
So we'll be provided financials. I love the idea of providing the smaller groups like the mayor was talking about with some of the groups that were doing the farming. I get it. It's just that it's the oversight to make sure that it's being done a specific way that always concerns me on these types of things. And until I see that, I don't feel comfortable with that part of this.
Councilman, we agree with you that staff, that is the part that is very important, and that's why we believe it is going to be important for us to add some capacity on the staff side for contract monitoring for exactly that point. And also, just to mention, the audit committee today did request that this also be a regular item for them and their oversight as well.
And Mayor, if someone would be willing to just break the motion up, if they want to, they can do that. If not, I'm fine either way. I still don't feel completely comfortable with that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Waring.
Thank you. So Ed, you referenced, and to build on Sal's point, obviously you and I talked both offline, and Marcelo, you and I talked offline, and then we also came up with the audit committee. So, I mean, there are a couple things, just the overall COVID funding, $293 million, which is a lot of money. It's about 1/5 of our entire general fund, to put it in context. And then you got, as other members have rightfully said, you got to get that money out in the street because the crisis is happening right now. So there's also a time factor of trying to spend like 1/5 of that we're used to of our normal budget, and then just getting it out there quickly. RFPs that would normally be a year or whatever, we're just talking about doing in a month. So that's concerning. I voted no last week just because a lot of money was moving around, and I didn't know if there was 100% clarity on where it was going and what it was going to be doing. Ed, you and I discussed this morning an example coming out of Mississippi. I don't know how many people followed it, but it was it was a state level thing. I don't think it was COVID funding. It was other federal funding, but a lot of it has gone missing. I think that's a charitable way to say it, and people are being prosecuted. Millions of dollars. So I think it was their Department of DES, more or less, if you're looking for an analogy. 1.1, roughly, I think, millions of dollars wound up going to the former Packer quarterback who lives in Mississippi, Brett Favre, for speeches and appearances and stuff that he has acknowledged he did not make, and he's paying the money back. But there's a couple things going on there. First, why did they make payments for services that were never rendered to the tune of $1.1 million? And second, what idiot thought, you know what, even if he's going to do the appearances and stuff, how does that help people who are financially challenged or in an emergency? What good does it really meet them to hear a motivational speech? No offense to the guy, but to Brett Favre. So when you're throwing money in this kind of size around, it makes me nervous. It's not just the auditing. It's also who's signing off that whatever plans other people, not city staffers, are coming up with are meritorious. Because to me, that 1.1 million, even if the speeches, which they weren't, I think that's been acknowledged, and the money's being returned, apparently, according to news reports, why would you even think that's a good idea? Why would that even make sense? So Sal talked about administrative costs, and that's one component, but sort of what the money is being used for. So I have some of the same concerns. Marcel, we talked about this. Yes, some of the organizations are large organizations we've all heard of and are well known. And I referred you to examples. I hate to pick on one group, but it's a national group everybody's heard of, the United Way. Google the United Way and scandals. And Marcel, we talked about one. Oh no, there's several. Millions of dollars, again, going missing by like the head people. It does make me a little nervous. So I'm looking, as it sounds like Sal was as well, kind of comfort in what we're dealing with. We're not going to know every organization by name. We're not going to know every certainly person who works there by name. It's great to have a contract. We do, outsourcing all the time. But if we outsource to do some task, if it doesn't happen, we tend to notice. In this case, I'm not sure we have enough people to go around to check every dollar because it's so much money. It's so quick. And we're partnering with people that maybe perhaps we're not used to partnering with. I don't know. Do we have a financial relationship or otherwise with every organization we'd be partnering with here? If that was mentioned in the presentation, I don't recall. But we're getting a little bit outside of our normal stuff with this money. And so is there anybody who's responsible, who's overseeing this, who has a team of people who are checking not only where the money is going with auditing, but also exactly what the money is being used for the purposes that we deem meritorious? Who signs off on that?
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, this is similar to the conversation we had. So I think there's several layers to it. The first is that each agency receiving money will have to execute a contract with us. So the first is that our attorneys will write a contract that will put these guarantees and requirements in place. Secondly, then, will be a layer of contract monitoring where we have employees or contractors of the City of Phoenix whose job it is to ensure that the contract is being followed, and they will do that in real time. It won't be an after the fact, it will be as it goes along, which is where we will need to put some resources that we don't have today into the contract monitoring for these specifically, because to your point, these is very high profile and very fast. And then the third layer is the audit afterwards, in which our city audit department, as you know, just has an audit plan in place today, which includes a robust amount of auditing of the coronavirus funds that we're going to receive. All that is going to be overseen, well, the first two pieces of the contracting and the contract oversight will be overseen by Mr. Barton, and then the city auditor, of course, will do his work. But it is important. We do recognize the importance of it, and we do know that we need to have staff resources dedicated to that, and we will do so.
Mayor?
Councilman, yes.
So this is troubling in the sense of I think the people's hunger supersedes the comfort of a couple of council people on this council. I think we trust organizations, and being out there and seeing some of the food drives and seeing how they're supporting people, it's not like we're picking people out of the air. It's folks that are trusted, and I trust Roseanne, who's been doing the food justice work, in knowing what organizations are actually supporting people. And I don't know, it sometimes feels like we're living in completely different planets when we are getting calls from people that don't have air conditioners, that are in the streets, that are hungry, and we need to hurry up and get this money to them. And then hearing other folks in the council not knowing of that. And so I wonder if we could actually get some testimony. I hope we do not delay this in any way, but maybe what we need to do is get some testimony, get some video, get some pictures of what some of these amazing organizations are doing and how they're helping the community, so that we can show the rest of the council what's actually happening out there during this crisis.
Thank you. And I think, go ahead, Councilwoman Williams, and then Councilman Nowakowski.
I have a couple of questions on that. In the contract that we put out, or the RFP, are we going to require them to be either an established 501c3 or have been in business for a certain length of time, so that we know that they have the ability to actually follow through on this? And can we put it in the contract? And can we also put in a maximum for administrative fees?
Mayor Gallego and Councilwoman Williams, yes, we can most definitely ensure that those terms are included in our contracts.
Because I think that makes it easier and a stronger case that they have the ability to do what they say they're going to do. I just think it's very important that we also hire or contract some employees to come in and do the regular monitoring to make sure they are following through with what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Nowakowski.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mayor, I want to thank staff for coming up with these different organizations and for my colleagues to come up and approving $5 million. Hopefully it does pass for these organizations. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is there some type of a matrix of why, St. Mary's Food Bank is getting 5 times more than St. Vincent de Paul or 8 times more than Salvation Army. And then we have that, the whole Arizona Food Bank Association. Are any of these other organizations like St. Mary's Food Bank, St. Vincent de Paul, or Salvation Army a part of that? And is there a way for them to double dip? And are we looking at some kind of a matrix of zip code areas and census tracts where people of need, where they're losing the jobs the most, that are being laid off, are being targeted, and that residents from the city of Phoenix, people that we represent, all of us, are making sure that they're getting taken care of first. A fine example, the city of Phoenix put together a homeless campus that's a top of the notch, and now we're the only ones in the whole region that has this type of facility that provides all these different services, where at that time, all the other cities, all the other counties were talking about doing the same. We're the only ones that came through with it. So I believe that our good acts sometimes backfire on us, and other cities take advantage. So I want to make sure that all the other cities put in their fair share to the food banks also. I know that the state put in $500,000, and we're putting in $5 million. So my hat's off to my colleagues for doing that. And I think we need to really put in the max, but I just want to make sure that, I'm not really sure how you figured out the numbers. Why would St. Mary's get 5 times more than the rest? And not saying nothing bad about St. Mary's, but I just want to figure that out. So if I get those questions asked, I'm able to answer those.
Mayor Gallego and Councilman Nowakowski, we determine those numbers in consultation with the industry. What I'd like to ask is Roseanne, if she could explain, if you will, some of the details on that. There's quite a bit of work that she has been doing, as the mayor and city council have acknowledged, in this field, and she really was instrumental in helping us from a human services perspective be able to navigate what can best meet the needs of our community in this current COVID environment. Roseanne?
Thank you. Yes, Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski. So with regards to the amount of funding, there's a couple of things that you should be aware of. One is that the St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, underneath that umbrella, there are anywhere from 180 to 200 smaller organizations, everything from nonprofits to houses of worship that participate and get their food from and get assistance from St. Mary's. So they are the ones that provide most of the food bank services, if not nearly all of them, within the city of Phoenix. And when we approach them to see what they might need over the next 6 months, this is the 3 areas that we mentioned is where they need the most help. Transportation was a great big one because delivery and getting that out is so important now, and it's not something that they have been doing on a regular basis to this level of intensity, so they needed to shore that up in addition to delivery and cold storage, the warehousing piece, and then the food piece. The Arizona Association of Food Banks, which is a statewide organization, has a smaller footprint within the city of Phoenix. So they provide the same type of services through different channels, but on a smaller level. So that's the difference in the amount of funding that they requested, is that their footprint is much smaller in the city of Phoenix. And with regards to St. Vincent de Paul and Salvation Army, we also did ask them specifically for what they needed, and this is what they told us that they wanted. So they did have the opportunity to submit, whatever might be necessary over the next 6 months, and this is what St. Vincent de Paul came back with, as well as Salvation Army. So it's a matter of the size of the networks and the needs from each of those different organizations.
Roseanne, thank you. And the nonprofits that are receiving that 1.7, these are volunteers that have been in South Phoenix and southwest areas of my district that have been volunteering and working with the poor. So I trust a lot of those organizations. Personally, I have relationships with them, so I have no questions about their integrity and where the money is going to go with that. So thank you very much. And is there a way for us, Mayor, to maybe challenge the other mayors of the other cities to at least try to match us in somehow, some way? So then we really do have that regional approach. I think that's the city of Phoenix. We're always those front runners are the ones that are always trying to do good, and we need to make sure that the rest of the cities are on top of it also. So thank you for your leadership, and thanks to all my colleagues.
Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski. I think it's definitely fair for us to share with our fellow cities what we are doing in this area, and I would include other levels of government, including the state of Arizona, which I believe has $1.8 billion to allocate. The need is enormous. I think we are going to hear from some community leaders who have dedicated their lives to making sure we have nutritious food in our community, about just how great the challenge is. We will next, though, go to the Vice Mayor.
Oh, go. Yeah, so I just want to thank everyone for this great presentation. I mean, there's just a lot of need, especially right now where I'm sure everyone has seen it on social media, that there's a lot of families that have not received unemployment checks. So we have a lot of families right now that are struggling to being able to put food on the table. I know that the different school districts have been doing a lot to try to make sure that they keep their families fed. And I'm happy to see that we're including the school districts and whatever we have established already, especially in our low-income areas, that we're going to continue to provide food for the children, and hoping that we will be able to continue to do that when and if the kids go back to school. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well said. Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I appreciate and I'm grateful for all the work that has been going on, especially in this area. As we know, food is very important and is one of the pieces that Maslow hierarchy that is needed. And so the question that I have is to Roseanne, is that there are community restaurants that have opened up their doors to serve those that are homeless, but also to feed nurses, doctors, anybody in the community that was without food. And I want to know if, I would appreciate that is included. I happen to have a great respect for Savannah at Barrio Café. I was able to go and work one day with her side by side and her staff to prep meals and help make the meals. And she did a phenomenal job of just privately raising money. Would she be able to qualify for this?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, that's exactly the reason that we included restaurants, and thanks to the mayor for her guidance in this one as well, because we do recognize that there are folks like Barrio Cafe that are offering these meals. There are others as well that would like to do this, and so that is exactly the reason we included them, and we would certainly consider Barrio Cafe would be an example that could qualify for these funds.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Wonderful, and thank you, Roseanne. Are we ready to hear from community members? We have a wide variety of stakeholders involved in food, and we'll begin with Marcos from our nation's very first food bank, St. Mary's.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys for having us. I am joined by our CEO and our Chief Development Officer. We want to thank the council, mayor, for putting this proposal on the table. We obviously are here in support of that. As you mentioned, we are the first food bank. We are very proud of our 53-year history here in the Valley. I did want to talk a little bit about our network. I know it's been talked about a little bit. Councilman Nowakowski, when we talked about St. Mary's network, we're talking about 330 agencies within the city limits. You had mentioned houses of worship in Maryville specifically, and I just wanted to name a few off the top of my head. Santo Niño, Catholic Church, Epworth, United Methodist Church, Thomas Road Baptist Church, Calvary United Methodist, and Neighborhood Church. Those are some of the few that are in Maryville. Salvation Army and St. Vincent de Paul were also mentioned. They're part of our agency network. This morning we were at Kroc Center, served over 300 families there on Broadway this morning. In Maryville specifically, we also partner with a lot of schools. We partner with the Cartwright School District, Victory Collegiate Academy, Pioneer Elementary, Acclaim Academy. In addition to those, Cartwright School District has one of our biggest school pantries. It's kind of our gold standard of school pantries. They've been serving the Maryville community out of their resource center on 51st Avenue for about 3 years now. In addition to that, we partner with many of the senior centers, the Adam Diaz Senior Center here on Thomas, several of the other City of Phoenix senior centers that are in Maryville. We've recently started to partner with Mountain Park Health Centers, the one there on 6th, 7th, and Thomas. So that kind of outlines our network. Obviously the past couple of months have been very challenging for us. We luckily, fortunately have a strong infrastructure, but a lot of the agencies that we work with are, to some of the council members' point, they are run by volunteers, and we respect that. We understand that. We have done everything. We have done everything that we can do to this point to invest in their infrastructure, in equipment, in operational services, things like that. Most importantly, it's getting food to those most vulnerable in our community. That's what's at the forefront for us. That has presented the biggest challenges. A lot of people who used to be able to come out to one of our centers or to one of our community events can no longer do so. So we've switched our models. We've been partnering with folks that we've never partnered with before, like Area Agency on Aging. They're doing home deliveries in partnership with us. We've ramped up our home delivery door-to-door. We employ a no-contact model, so just like your Amazon packages are delivered, we knock on the door, drop it at the door, and then back away, wait for the folks to come and get the food. So, again, we just want to thank you guys for this proposal. We think that, our accountability, our annual audits, financial audits, single audits, are all available. Details about our agency networks are available for us to provide for you, but we'll do our best to make sure that money gets to the people that really need it in the fastest way possible.
Thank you. Any questions from council members for Marcos before I go to Jessica from St. Vincent de Paul? Wonderful. Thank you. Very helpful information. We will next go to Jessica, followed by Jeff Gephardt.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Great. That's so fascinating.
We're trying to be modern.
We're all doing great. We're all doing the best we can, and it's working. Mayor Gallego, members of the City Council, thank you so much for considering this really important proposal for the community. All of us, St. Vincent de Paul, Salvation Army, St. Mary's, all of these wonderful organizations, the Arizona Association of Food Banks, are trying so hard to be agile and pivot and go where the need is. And so this, your generosity and consideration is really so helpful in that. we, you know, we don't always link this and talk about it that much, but what we're doing is so much about homelessness prevention, because these families and these individuals that are coming to us for food are having to choose between food and rent and utilities. And so we're giving them this really important safety net that is preventing further crisis in our entire community, in serving the most vulnerable. Marshall, you did a great job of explaining that the two areas and the two pieces of St. Vincent de Paul where we provide food with our home food box delivery program throughout the entire state of Arizona, actually. And then our congregate dining rooms, which, because we are shifting and we're observing physical distancing among our guests, those we serve, as well as wanting our thousands and thousands of volunteers to stay home and stay safe, we're doing to-go meals at our dining rooms. And that is really actually having a ripple positive effect, because we're partnering with local restaurants, and some of whom are able to donate, but some of whom we are purchasing that food from them. And so thereby, and they've said to us, if it weren't for you all, we don't know if we'd be able to stay in business right now. So we're helping these local businesses stay open, helping people stay employed, and helping these restaurant employees stay off. So it's an amazing ripple effect. And as I said, we're just so grateful, all of us who are trying so hard to provide food quickly, find where the greatest need is. An example of that is our family dining room, where before COVID, people were coming in and we were serving about 150 meals a night lately, and now we're serving to-go meals. People are coming to us. We're also providing activity packets for the kids. We're now serving about 400 meals per night. So the need has grown tremendously, and we're just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to continue that, and as I said, continue to pivot and meet the greatest need in our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for innovating in difficult times where need is only growing. We will next go to Jeff, followed by Luke Black.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Jeff Gephardt from the Salvation Army. First and foremost, thank you for your consideration and your support. As you've heard from many of our partners, we're all kind of working together to meet the needs of the residents of Phoenix. To answer some of the council members' questions, obviously in regards to the Salvation Army's request, our request is based off of those needed gaps. You see the partners are working together to meet those needs, and our request in particular is where we have those gaps and increases. Salvation Army in Phoenix is seeing a 126% increase in first-time recipients of services March over March. And so it's a massive increase. As you've heard, we've continued to serve meals and families across the valley. In particular, you heard in the South Mountain area, we continue to partner with St. Mary's, and twice a week are doing a drive-through feeding for the residents of South Mountain region. Tomorrow, you will see, you feel free to join us if anybody wants to come out and social distance. We will be serving 500 families through the Van Buren corridor. In a partnership with fresh produce and food that we were able to secure. Again, making sure that the most vulnerable are getting more than just box meals and able to get some wholesome food as well. We continue to serve the Maryville community and across the Phoenix area. To answer some of the questions on how, again, we have all transparency in our services. You know, the Salvation Army has been proud to serve for 126 years the residents of Phoenix. So again, we have an established partnership here to continue to serve those in need across the valley, across the state, and specifically here in Phoenix. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Luke will be followed by Angie Rogers. Luke, floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think this is really a great example of Council taking really a proactive step to make sure that folks that have these immediate needs are getting those needs met. And so really just quickly, I would encourage the members of Council to vote in support of this, especially the $1.7 million for grassroots groups and smaller groups. You know, that money is vital for community members that those groups have been working with and have built relationships with And so I would just encourage council to vote in support of this funding. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Angie will be followed by Mary Wolf Francis.
Thank you, council members. This is Angie Rogers. I'm the president and CEO of the Arizona Food Bank Network. And I just, again, want to echo what many of the colleagues have said to reiterate 2 points. One, the increased need that our network is seeing. We opened up our grant making on Monday, already have 78 applicants for consideration for requests for simple things like additional storage and including refrigeration requests, making sure they can accommodate drive-through models to keep our staff and our clients safe, addressing heat relief stations, knowing that we are entering a very dangerous period during this time of food and water distribution, in addition to providing some increased accountability that the council members have questions about. Our network has been providing food assistance from St. Mary's and from our agency partners for 10 decades. You want to make sure that you are getting food to not just folks who have the best of intentions in mind, but also who do this for a living. Making sure that we are getting food out to folks who can meet food safety requirements, who can make sure that we are partnering with organizations who have the accountability measures in place that the council is going to need, not just for their own peace of mind, but for the federal requirements that we know are coming, and that our network can provide that. So I think we stand ready to provide you what you need from an accountability standpoint, but also assuring that we get the funds out as flexibly as we need to.
Wonderful, thank you. It's good to have partners in times of great need. Our final speaker on this item is Mary Wolf Francis.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate this time to talk about what's happening at ICM Food and Clothing Bank in downtown. It's actually southwest of downtown Phoenix. We're at 9th Avenue and Grant or Lincoln. We're just on the, quote, other side of the tracks of where all the big development is going on, but we serve the most needy, the most challenging populations, and it's been growing since the COVID virus. So I just know that we've been around since 1983. We were born out of congregations that started us because they felt that they wanted to help the people in need that didn't have the resources. We work specifically with the working poor, even though we're just down the street from the homeless population. And we've been significantly challenged during this time to keep our doors open. We have 6 staff members, but we are still serving anywhere from 100 to 130 families every day with a large food box within the St. Mary's network. So we'd like to continue to do what we're doing, and we sincerely appreciate all the support that we've been getting from our community partners, from our donors, from our congregations. And we really hope that you do support this effort to help us to continue to do the good work that we're doing, keeping our doors open.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you all for the important work you are doing for a community in need. We have seen a lot of people make great sacrifices to slow the spread of COVID-19, and it is wonderful that the city can support some of the organizations that are innovating and responding to an unprecedented crisis. We'll turn it back to council members for 1 or 2 possible motions and any additional comments.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Pastor.
Go ahead. Do you need a motion?
Yes.
I could do the motion, Mayor. A motion to pass the $5 million for food as suggested by staff.
Second.
Wonderful. We have a motion and a second. Councilwoman Williams.
Can you also include any suggestions for contract inclusion?
So Councilwoman, that would be
the
to make,
administrative fee, you know, some of the things that were mentioned.
okay, so it would be then a motion to pass staff's recommendation and to prioritize administrative audit support, as well as making sure that the organizations understand the high burden of record keeping and compliance associated with federal dollars.
Right. And set an administrative fee at the maximum.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman, say that again.
Set an administrative fee or maximum amount they can use for administrative uses. I don't want them to take 50% of the money they get and use for admin. I want to make sure it's food purchases, et cetera. So if the contract could have a set amount in there that the auditors could verify that's what they used it for, I think that would be very prudent for us.
Okay, and I might turn to our staff. I think administration, we certainly want as much aid to our community as possible, but we also want to acknowledge that federal money has a higher level of paperwork associated with than many other sources of money. And I am well aware that in past disasters, there have been high levels of audits and sometimes even legal action. And we certainly, at least in my case, we want this aid to go to helpful situations, and we would never want a nonprofit to get in trouble. So for our staff, how do we maximize aid but make sure we are, as two councilmen particularly said, following the rules?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, members of the council, we will certainly look at each of these contracts, and to your point, we will determine a reasonable administrative cost and include that in the contract with the also documentation that they'll need to provide to us showing what they utilize those administrative costs for.
Wonderful. Councilman Nowakowski.
So, Mayor, a lot of times when you get grants for nonprofits, 15% to 20% are allocated for administration fees and the rest are for services provided. Could we do something like that maybe? Making sure that at least 80 or 85% of that is actually for services provided to needy families.
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, members of the council, on the most recent one that we did for wildfire, we did cap it at the 20%, so we could include in these contracts no more than 20% for administrative costs.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment on that.
Okay. I think Councilmember Garcia made the motion.
Was that 20%?
That was our Assistant City Manager, yes, suggestion.
Yeah, that makes, I'm fine with it. The second.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So we have a motion on the table. Any comments before we vote? Roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
No.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes, I want to feed our community.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Waring?
No.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
Yes.
And Mayor Gallego?
Yes.
Mayor, that motion carries 7-2.
Wonderful, thank you. The Phoenix City Council has voted to allocate $5 million to food aid and to partner with nonprofits to make sure those who need nutritious food have an opportunity as we respond to COVID-19. Thank you to all of our partners who are going to help us implement that, as well as staff who put together a great stakeholder process with very little time to move it forward in a time of great importance. We next move on to item number 2, which is Wi-Fi for residents at city-owned public facilities. I will turn it back to Jeff Barton, our Deputy City Manager, to bring us back to our strategic plan and talk about where this fits in.
Mayor, members of the council. Yes, we zoom back out to our overall strategic plan. And again, we're going to zoom right back into the $75 million allocation for community investment and zoom in to our distance learning and Wi-Fi access that will be presented to you by Cindy Stotler, Inger Erickson, and Rita Hamilton. And this is one that I particularly enjoy this because I grew up in public housing for 18 years of my life. So this is something that I really find very exciting. So with that, I'll pass it on to Cindy.
And thank you, Jeff. It's actually Tony Macron. I'm kicking things off. No worries at all. So good afternoon, Mayor Gallego and council members. The digital divide has become even more apparent during the coronavirus pandemic, as we are aware. And we're pleased to be here today to discuss with you phase 1 of a plan that will make it easier for residents to connect to the internet for free at all city-owned public buildings. And joining me today is Cindy Stotler, our housing director, Inger Erickson, our Parks and Recreation Director, and Rita Hamilton, our Library Director. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about our proposal for Wi-Fi access in public housing. The digital divide directly affects the success of low-income children in school. The lack of knowledge and access to technology can perpetuate and even worsen the socioeconomic disparity that already affects public housing children. This has been especially apparent with the COVID-19 school closures and the resulting disparity of continuing education for children who have internet access and those who do not. We have been working to address this connectivity challenge. Phoenix Housing has been participating in the HUD Connect Home program since 2017. Connect Home is a public-private partnership designed to bridge the digital divide for low-income households. Through this program, we have been working to provide digital education and internet access to our residents for several years. Much of this access will be provided in our newly constructed properties using the Choice Neighborhoods program and the Rental Assistance Demonstration program. We will have 3 of these projects under construction this year. But right now, with schools closed due to COVID-19, it is critical to provide a more immediate means for distance learning and educational needs for children, as well as access to telemedicine and general connectivity for services and social media for the entire family. We currently have about 800 households with school-aged children in our public housing. The age and condition of most of our public housing properties makes it very difficult to provide the most common cable or Wi-Fi access to internet services. Our experience working with our residents and with industry experts in the Connect Home program has led us to identify Wi-Fi hotspots as the best method of providing connectivity in our current public housing properties. A few tablets and hotspots have been provided to public housing residents in the last year. They generally like these tablets for their ease of use, portability, and similar platform to Android cell phones. They can be used anywhere, so residents can take the tablet with them when they are relocated for construction projects, providing them with continuity of access until they are settled in their new housing with internet capacity. Today, I am requesting your approval to issue a purchase order with our HUD Connect Home partner, T-Mobile, for approximately $660,000 to provide Wi-Fi access for 800 public housing households with school-aged children. This purchase provides our residents with a 10-inch LG tablet, a Bluetooth keyboard, an SD card for expanded memory, and a 24-month hotspot with unlimited data. The hotspot can be used to connect other devices in the household. Also included in the purchase is device management software, which will allow the housing department to track the devices and push out notifications and educational information. T-Mobile is an official HUD Connect Home stakeholder and an approved contractor for the City of Phoenix. T-Mobile has a successful track record of connecting public housing residents in large housing authorities like New York, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. They have been working closely with us for about a year to understand our residents in Phoenix and recommend workable solutions. They are providing a free web filter, implementation assistance, and they are extending a promotion to give us the $300 tablet for free with the purchase of 24 months of unlimited data. The Housing Department is committed to the educational success of the children in our housing. Our supportive services team has close relationships with the schools that serve our public housing properties. We offer tutoring programs and after-school homework clubs on our properties, and we have caseworkers embedded in 2 elementary schools that serve our students. We will be working directly with the schools to image these devices, set up the web filter to match the school settings, and provide support for recommended educational resources. We will also add a digital education component to our summer and after-school programs to teach kids how to use these tablets, access educational programs, and assist with their schoolwork. This is the largest technology rollout we have ever done, so we will create a Connect Home implementation team with housing staff, IT staff, and T-Mobile staff. The team will be on site to assist with the distribution, set up the device management software, assist residents with questions, and troubleshoot any issues. We are very excited to begin issuing tablets to our residents. Once we are approved today, we are ready to issue the purchase order and get going. T-Mobile has confirmed they have 800 of these devices available in inventory now. They will image and ship them in batches of 250 at a time to help us manage the distribution. We anticipate receiving the first batch by mid-June and will complete the distribution in about 6 weeks, which would be the end of July. This is a conservative estimate on the distribution, and if we can streamline the process as we go, we will get them out faster than 6 weeks. I want to thank you again for this tremendous opportunity to provide Wi-Fi access to our public housing residents in the middle of a pandemic when they so desperately need it. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for your hard work with key stakeholders to make sure we connect our residents. Councilmember Wonderful. I'm sorry, was that, I didn't hear anyone.
Yeah, Mayor's Councilmember Garcia.
Perfect. Councilmember Garcia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we're able to do this for the public housing units. I think it's going to be amazing for them and to make sure to do the digital divide. So I don't know if there's other comments, but I wanted to make a motion to approve what is recommended. And I also want to move to that we allocate an additional $2 million from the unallocated COVID-19 community investment money to the distance learning and Wi-Fi access plan to work on broader city Wi-Fi initiative. I think I'm glad we're helping the folks in public housing, but I've seen other ideas and ways that we can expand Wi-Fi in other parts of the city.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. So just to confirm, that would be a total of $3 million for Wi-Fi, including the items in the staff presentation.
That's correct.
Mayor, this is Ed. If we might, we have a recommendation that would need a little bit more money on the parks and library side. So we also just wanted to cover that as well.
Perfect. City Manager, would you prefer we go to Inger's presentation and then come back for a possible motion?
That would be fine. I think once the council hears that, the council member may want to include that. So.
Yeah, that's fine. So include 300,000 more for this. So it'd be a total of 3.3 million.
Mayor, members of the City Council, I want to expand a little bit further about the free public Wi-Fi access at city facilities. Currently, as you know, we have 52 facilities that include libraries, community centers, and recreation centers that already have Wi-Fi inside the buildings. However, we have 4 recreation centers that don't have Wi-Fi: Grant Park, Holiday Park, Playa Margarita, and Hayden. And what we are recommending with this is that we add those 4 locations for a total of $70,000 so that all of our brick and mortar facilities have Wi-Fi on the inside. Continuing on then, because those 52 facilities do have Wi-Fi already, putting an antenna or installing an antenna on the top of the building or somewhere within the building would allow us to get a broader reach in the park facility or library facility and the surrounding area. And to do that, it would cost $520,000 to do that. And to give you an example of how that might throw a reach of access, on the screen you'll see Desert West Community Center. And you see the yellow line that goes around the park, which gives you the border of the park. And then the red star is actually the community center where that's located within the park. A 600-foot radius gives you that throw of ability to connect to the Wi-Fi around that building. And so that is something that we'd recommend. If this is something that meets with your approval, we could begin implementing early in August, possibly sooner, depending on equipment availability. With that, I'll turn it back over to Tony to kind of summarize the entire ask, and we can answer questions at that point.
Thank you, Inger. So to summarize, for the recommendation, Cindy's recommendation related to the public housing is $660,000. The addition of the 4 recreation centers, allowing for Wi-Fi inside those 4 recreation centers that don't currently have it, is $70,000. And then adding the outside public antennas for a broader reach for the Wi-Fi is $520,000. So the original recommendation was for $1,250,000, and then I was hearing that the council also wanted to add $2 million to that dollar amount. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful, thank you, Tony. And I think it would be valuable to have some council members involved in a stakeholder process to talk about how we can best serve our community with Wi-Fi and leverage existing assets. It's certainly a huge need, and
So Mayor,
as a parent myself, I think Wi-Fi is so valuable in getting through the pandemic. I was trying to teach my son patterns and having such a hard time, and then there was software on the internet that I'm afraid was more effective than and I certainly know how internet can be a great educational tool when you can't have a teacher physically present. So it's wonderful to see council members work in this area. Councilman Nowakowski has been working the entire pandemic to bring the proposal forward in partnership with our Parks Department, and Councilmember Garcia, very passionate about bringing Wi-Fi to our public housing. Councilwoman Pastor has been working with so many educational stakeholders. Really, this whole council wants to support our students. We are all parents, and we know what a time it is to be a parent. I think I saw Councilwoman Williams first, and then Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve both staff reports for the Wi-Fi and for the tablets. I think it's very important we get those out. I am curious what the bill would be the following year on the tablets, the Wi-Fi. I know she said the cost was included this year. I just want to make sure we don't have to go take those tablets back.
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, and members of the council, that is the full cost of 24 months of unlimited data. So that's 2 years of data included in that $660,000, and we do not intend to take the tablets back. We are assuming that those families will be moving back into our newly constructed housing that we are building with the 2 programs I talked about, Choice Neighborhoods and Rental Assistance Demonstration, and they will have access to free Wi-Fi in the community areas and the lobbies and the buildings there. So that should carry them through the next 2 years of relocation.
Mayor, I'll second that motion too. Mayor, I'll second that.
Mayor. We lost the mayor.
Or Mayor? Sal? Or
Mayor?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just had a lovely conversation with myself. So I, after recognizing Councilwoman Williams, had said we would go next to Councilwoman Pastor. I do believe we already have a motion from Councilmember Garcia in front of this council, so I think we would go with that first. But Councilwoman Pastor, the floor is yours.
So my understanding, well, first, I just want some understanding as there is a motion already on the floor that include the tablets plus the additional $2 million, and then also the ones for the park.
Councilwoman
Yes,
Pastor,
and
that
I
is
guess-
correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's the motion.
Okay, and I guess, did Councilwoman Williams want to make a substitute motion, or are we
No,
okay with the Councilmember Garcia's?
I had heard you say we'd put them together and vote. I thought you said to Councilman
Right.
Garcia, so I was just trying to do so.
Helped me get through this meeting. I am grateful. Councilmember Garcia, do you want, should we put them together, or do you want to restate your motion now that we have seen the presentation on the parks facilities?
Yeah, I got on ahead of the presentation, and in my initial motion had already included that.
So do you want to restate your motion for us now that we have seen both presentations, and then I can turn to Councilwoman Williams and see if we are all on the same page?
So I motion that we pass what staff has recommended, plus a $2 million addition from the unallocated COVID-19 community investment money for the distance learning and Wi-Fi access plan to work on broader citywide Wi-Fi. And so, yes to everything that was presented today, plus $2 million.
And so we would have a stakeholder process and talk to folks who are working in this area, and then with the ones for which we don't have a specific plan, we would come back to the council about how to allocate those dollars?
That's correct. Very similar to the arts grant, what we did with that. And that's my thought.
Councilwoman Williams.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the additional dollars are to find additional sites to provide Wi-Fi? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, and the idea is to earmark it for a future plan so that we can work with school districts or other areas that are in need of this. So just to have a more broad community-wide Wi-Fi representation or ability to access.
Wonderful. And we have heard from people in my office who have different partnerships. So, for example, Verizon has been working with the Cartwright School District, and there are other initiatives that Phoenix Union has that Councilman Pastor has worked on. So I think it would be great to work with many partners. The CARES Act version 2 that was introduced recently also has significant allocations to support Wi-Fi access, and so I would love to follow that bill as it moves forward and make sure we take advantage of any federal resources that we don't already have as well. I think it's important the need is great.
Include Washington School District, because if you look at the map on city sites, further north you go, the lower it is, so I'd really like to have them come back with a recommendation because I support expanding it. I just hate just getting a blank check and not knowing where.
So, Mayor?
Councilwoman Pastor and then Councilman Nowakowski.
So I think what we should do, because there's many stakeholders or many people interested in this, may I suggest or recommend that we build a task force or a group to build this plan, distance learning and Wi-Fi access, so that it is across all of our districts and there's equity amongst it. I think what we'll see is once we have stakeholders at the table, we will be able to leverage many different points of funding to build this plan and be a model city.
I think that is a great suggestion. Clearly, there is need in many, many corners of our city. Councilman Nowakowski.
So, Mayor, going with that, with Laura's suggestion, is there a way that we could just go ahead and maybe pass what we have right now allocated and the plan that was presented to us, and then come back next week with a detailed plan for each of our districts and trying to figure out where that money's going, because allocating $2 million, I'm not sure if that's too much, not enough, and where are those fundings going to? You know, T-Mobile's been a great partner, but there's also Verizon, AT&T. So how can we try to get some more leverage with some other vendors that are out there too, right? So I would like to just go with that, maybe that secondary motion, and then come back with a plan for the other $2 million, if that's what everybody agrees with.
Mayor?
Mayor. Councilman DeCiccio, and then Councilwoman
Well, thank
Stark.
you, Mayor. And this is more toward Councilman Garcia. This is one area you want to go big on. This is huge. And let me explain, at least from my end of it. I don't think the $2 million is going to even be a drop in the bucket of what you're going to need. And you can accomplish huge things with this, not today, but years from now. Getting these kids, and, you know, maybe you put a stand, like most of my district is doing okay. So, you know, certain parts of my district we don't need to focus on. And this is one of those times I don't think any of us need to be parochial. But there are certain parts of Phoenix that really need this help. And it's not just about connecting to the Wi-Fi, it's connecting to the hardware that you need, like the tablets and everything else you're going to need. What we saw with this pandemic was we got a chance to see how underconnected a lot of our kids are. So my biggest fear, believe it or not, I am not as afraid of the COVID as I'm afraid of what's going to happen in the future. And that's going to be the future of our kids. Because so many children are being left behind right now. As we're having this meeting, these kids are being left behind because A, they don't have the money, they don't have the ability to hook up, they don't have the ability to communicate with their schools. They don't have that. And so I look back at my parents, who were immigrant parents. We never would have had the money to do any of this stuff at all. And it would have been buying milk or buying one of these things, these computers. It just would not have happened. So this is one area, and I know we're looking at everything else, but focusing this effort on those underserved or those individuals, we can look at poverty lines, we can look at a percentage above poverty, whatever that is, this is one of those things you want to go big on. And to Councilman Nowakowski and Garcia's point on this, working with the school districts is going to be critical. They've got some monies there too. We've got some monies. Pulling it together, I just think this is one area that you want to go big on. I will support you 100,000%, Councilman Garcia, in moving this thing forward. I mean, whatever it is you need to do, but don't think small on this. This is one of those areas you want to think very big on because it's going to impact our city long term. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you. I could go either way with the motion. I think that it probably will be more than $2 million. So I think it would be nice if staff would come back and show us how the $2 million plus, or probably maybe more, is going to be spent. But either way, I'm fine with the motion. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, and so I just want to clarify the motion even more. The idea is to both approve the 1.25 million or 1.3 I had said to get done what was presented today, and allocate $2 million for exactly what Councilman Nowakowski talked about and Councilwoman Pastor to create the rest of the plan to make sure that we can do this. I think agreeing with Councilwoman DeCiccio, we need to make sure that we make this happen, and I just want to make sure that we at least set $2 million aside. If it's more and we decide to add more to the plan, that's great, but with the original motion, the thought is we pass what's presented today and make sure we set aside $2 million for staff to come back and fulfill the rest of the plan.
Mayor, this is Ed.
Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just was going to reemphasize what Councilmember Garcia said. How we would view this motion as staff would be, we have a specific plan for public housing for our 4 park sites, and then for the 52 sites, that's about $1.3 million. Councilman Garcia's motion would address that, and then set aside $2 million of the remaining unallocated funds in that community services bucket that I would just need clarification, but between staff and I heard some mention of a task force, would take some time to develop a plan and would be able to come back to the council. It wouldn't be within a week. This is a pretty big lift. But we'll come back to the council knowing that there's a $2 million fund allocated here that we would be working from. Then the council could examine that and assess that if they wanted to put more, if there was more available to put into it. But the 2 million pieces is a set aside into specifically now working on Wi-Fi access in the community, and a plan would need to be developed, as was mentioned by Council Members Garcia and Pastor, to bring back for review.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think it makes sense to take time to do it right. We would want to understand what are the school districts already doing, what are our cable providers already doing, what are the wireless companies already doing, and are there other resources, including state resources and federal resources?
Mayor?
We talk about the need are great, and we want to make sure that we use these dollars as efficiently as possible and maximize the benefit as much as possible. Vice Mayor?
Yes. So I just had a couple, I think this is all great, and I as a mom as well, I get it, how important it is to making sure that we have the right resources for our children, and Wi-Fi has definitely become very essential. I just want to make sure, that the provider that we are using is going to be able to provide high quality for our residents and for people that really need the Wi-Fi. So I'm always a little skeptical of these different companies, but definitely very in favor of this. And then my question is, if for some reason Allocation needed assistance because they're having issues with their Wi-Fi service, is that cost responsibility of the city or of the vendor?
Just to clarify, are you asking Vice Mayor Guardado if, for example, in our public housing, with our public housing residents, if they have difficulty connecting specifically?
Yeah, like if they cannot connect, or they keep, I know some of the frustrations sometimes are, they lose the Wi-Fi, or they have trouble connecting or troubleshooting, like who is responsible?
Good question,
sure,
understood, yeah. Ms. Stotler.
Mayor and Vice Mayor Guardado, members of the council, we actually have that, the Connect Home team I spoke about in the presentation of housing staff, IT staff, and T-Mobile staff. They will be there during the distribution, and they will be there throughout, whatever time period it takes for folks to get used to those tablets. We are also going to ensure that our summer programs, in partnership with the Parks Department PAC programs, we were speaking about that earlier, include some digital learning hours, in all of it, so that we can make sure that the kids understand how to use that tablets and they're having access. But any access issues, if there's any issues with the tablet or the Wi-Fi, that's why T-Mobile is part of the team. They will be on site, and they will be there to help us remedy that situation and troubleshoot.
And Cindy, to the Vice Mayor's point, is the relationship between the individual family and T-Mobile, or between the city and T-Mobile for their individual tablet and service?
The relationship would be between the city and T-Mobile. We would take the lead on that, but we will bring them in to address any issues that any public housing families have.
And just out of curiosity, why is it that we chose T-Mobile instead of Verizon or AT&T or any? I just want to make sure that we give high quality to our residents. Like, were they the best option? And why?
So, Mayor, Vice Mayor Guardado, and members of the council, T-Mobile was chosen because they are already a partner in Connect Home, and we were already working with them. They partnered with us on a couple of small grants. They really understand public housing families and access for public housing. They have done the same programs and same kind of implementation in other large housing authorities. So as part of the Connect Home program, they really understand our needs, and the benefit was they were a stakeholder in Connect Home, and they're also a contractor for the city. So we had that connection and that ability to use them. We did do a couple of informal bids when we were just first looking at this, and bid for some Chromebooks, because that's what the schools were using, and with Verizon connectivity, and that bid was a couple $100,000 higher, which is why we went back to these tablets, which are cheaper, and in fact, the residents preferred the smaller tablet that acts more like a cell phone for them, and it was easier to use. So for those reasons, going with T-Mobile doesn't mean that other contractors couldn't do, as you've all spoken about, the another $2 million for the other low-income housing families might be appropriate to go with other contractors, but for public housing especially, T-Mobile specializes in that, and we were more comfortable with them.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Wonderful passion on the Phoenix City Council for connectivity. I think, are we ready for a vote? All right, roll call.
Councilman DeCiccio?
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pastor?
Yes.
Councilwoman Stark?
Yes.
Councilman Waring?
No.
Councilwoman Williams?
Where?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Guardado?
Yes.
Yes.
And Mayor Gallego?
Yes.
Mayor, that vote passes 8-1.
By an 8-1 vote, the Phoenix City Council has voted to expand internet access at city facilities, including public housing, community centers, and to work with partners to continue that important work. We are adjourned.